Hi, Teresa McGallagher here, today with some more suggestions for how you can feel better during this quarantine, isolation, lockdown period. This is my 14th video with tips on how to feel good. You can find my others on my YouTube channel, and today I want to talk about changing your story. This is a really powerful technique that can really alter your life and make it more positive and more fun. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how I've used this technique in my own life. So I talked in another video about being impeccable with your word. Hi, Brenda. And how important it is to be careful what you say because your words have power. And now I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. So a few years ago, I was doing some housework and I was in a bad mood, and I suddenly became aware of the fact that there was a story running in my mind while I was cleaning. And the story said, "My kids leave their junk everywhere. My husband expects me to pick up behind him all the time. No one in this household respects me. No one cares how I feel. They treat me like I'm the maid." And because I had that negative storyline running, and I wasn't even aware of it before, while I was cleaning, the job that I was doing really felt like drudgery. And when I became aware of the fact that I had that story going on, I suddenly realized that I had the power to change that story. So the next time that I had to do some housework, hi, Gregory, I changed the story to, "I'm a good mom. I take good care of my family. I'm a good wife. I'm responsible, and I make sure that everything gets done around here." So the activity didn't change at all. The only thing that changed was the story running in this program. And yet I had a completely different experience. I felt good about what I was doing. I felt proud of myself. I felt like I was spending my time in a worthwhile activity. The activity was exactly the same. The only thing that changed was the story. Now you can use this technique not only to rewrite the story as it's happening, if you become aware of your thoughts and catch them as it's happening, but also to change a story from your past that will alter the way that you feel in the present and the way that you feel in the future. And it's a very, very powerful technique. There are a couple of teachers that teach this. One is called the Choose Again exercise, 6 Steps to Freedom by Diederik Wolsak. I love that technique. But I'm not going to talk about it today. It's a little more involved. Instead, I'm going to talk about The Work by Byron Katie. If you're not familiar with Byron Katie, she's a spiritually awakened person who teaches a 4-step process for looking at your story and changing your story to change your life. She calls it The Work, and I went to one of her workshops several years ago with a friend. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Laura, who helped me with the worksheet when we were there together. So I had a story that when I was a child, something devastating happened in our family. Some kittens that we owned were killed when my mom was in a hurry and drove over the cats backwards. She didn't realize they were under the car, and she crushed these little kittens. And my sister and I were both devastated. And my mom was also very upset because she, was purely unintentional. And we had to get on a bus and ride to camp right after this happened. On the ride to camp, my sister was bawling the whole way. She was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I was 7 or 8 years old. And all the other girls on the bus kept saying, "What happened? What happened? Why is your sister crying?" And I told them all the story over and over again while my sister sat on the bus seat and cried. For years, I felt terrible about the way that I had handled this situation. I felt like I had been very selfish. I had been very pleased and excited that all the girls on the bus wanted to know what happened and were giving me attention, and I was reveling in being the center of attention and telling the story. And I felt guilty that I had not been a good big sister to my sister, and that I should have, hi Arthur, and that I should have hugged her and showed her how much I cared for her instead of thinking only about myself. So that was the story that I had, and that was the memory that I had. And it would just flash up from time to time, and I would feel bad about it and then forget about it. But when I went to the Byron Katie workshop, I wrote the story on a worksheet. And part of the process is that when you get to the end of the worksheet, you flip the story 180 degrees and you look at it from a different perspective. So, hi Donna, it's so nice to see you. So, when we did that, my friend Laura said, I don't think you were a bad big sister at all. I think you were an excellent big sister because you shielded your little sister from all this unwanted attention and all these nosy girls on the bus, and you allowed her space to grieve in private, and you protected her. Well, I had never thought of this story like that before. And in fact, I had to laugh at myself for judging myself so harshly, thinking that I had not been more mature at the time, because honestly, how mature can a 7-year-old be expected to be? And I saw that I had been really perfectionistic, really hard on myself, and I had just repeated this story that made me feel bad for no reason, because it was a whole nother way to look at it. So here's a miracle that happened afterwards. I called my sister and I said, at first I called my mom and I said, do you remember when you ran over those kittens with the car right before we had to get on the bus? And my mom went, oh, I'd forgotten all about that. Oh my goodness, how awful. I'd completely forgotten about it. And then when I called my sister and said, do you remember when this happened? My sister said, no, I don't remember that at all. And I suddenly realized that I had spent literally 50 years beating myself up for something that didn't even exist for other people. It wasn't even in their memory. It was just a story that I had been telling myself. So this is the way that you can use that technique. The work by Byron Katie, you can find it on her website. And the story, catching yourself when you're telling yourself things in the moment when it's happening, to redirect it and change the story. And you will find that when you are able to do this, you will release the guilt, release the judgment, and all of a sudden you will feel like a completely different, better, and happier version of yourself. So that's what I have to share with you today. It's lovely to see all of you on here live, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much for dropping in to spend a few minutes with me. Namaste.